There are moments in life when fate presents us with unimaginable situations, moments when the truth reveals itself with shocking brutality, forcing us to see the world with new eyes. This is the story of Julia, a woman who lived an experience so shocking and incredible that it seemed to have come out of a nightmare. Yet from this nightmare, Julia drew a strength and determination that led her to discover the truth and seek justice. Before we dive into the story, I invite you to subscribe to our channel and click on the bell so you don't miss any of our gripping stories. Stay with us until the end to find out how Julia managed to turn around a seemingly desperate situation. Julia woke up confused and disoriented. She felt the heavy, suffocating air and the muffled sound of voices around her. Slowly, the realization hit her like a bolt of lightning. She was trapped in a coffin. Panic and disbelief mixed as she tried to understand what was happening. Through the wood, she could hear the voices of Gianni, her husband, and Lara, her best friend. "I can't stand this wait any longer," Gianni whispered impatiently. "We have to finish this today. If anything goes wrong, our plan will collapse." Lara answered hesitantly, "But she's already dead. Why can't we just speed things up?" "It has to look like a natural accident," Gianni replied firmly. "Only then can we enjoy her legacy without suspicion." Julia felt her heart break. Those closest to her had plotted her death. Despair quickly turned to determination. She had to find a way out and expose their plot. Julia heard the funeral ceremony end and everyone had left. The cemetery workers were preparing for the final moment. "Bring it here," one of them ordered. Julia felt the coffin lift and then slowly begin to descend into the grave. The sound of the earth hitting the wood was like a final blow to her old life. With extreme effort, she began to scratch at the inside of the coffin, hoping someone would hear her. Suddenly, one of the workers stopped, listening intently. "Did you hear that noise too?" he asked his colleague. "It seemed to come from the coffin," the other replied, puzzled. With shaking hands, they opened the coffin lid, revealing a pale but alive Julia. "Help me," she whispered in a faint voice. The two men pulled her out and covered her with a blanket, unable to believe what they were seeing. Julia, weak but determined, refused to call the police. "I can't risk them finding out I'm alive," she explained. "I need medical help, but I can't go to the hospital." One of the workers had an idea. "I know a nurse who lives nearby. She can help us, no questions asked." Filippo, the nurse, immediately agreed to assist her and took her home. While he was treating her, Julia told him everything about Gianni and Lara's plot. Filippo, shocked by the story, called his cousin Renato, a private investigator. "We need evidence to incriminate them," Filippo said. Renato began following Gianni and Lara, gathering evidence of their diabolical plan. It wasn't easy, as Gianni and Lara were very careful not to leave obvious traces. Renato had to infiltrate their daily lives, listening in on conversations in cafes and following their furtive movements. Meanwhile, Julia slowly recovered, finding strength in her determination to see justice done. Every day, Filippo encouraged her not to give up, to believe that the truth would come out. One day, Filippo arrived with important news. "Renato has found enough evidence. It's time to act." Julia, Filippo, and Renato went to the police. The evidence they gathered was overwhelming. Recordings of conversations, suspicious bank movements, everything pointed to Gianni and Lara's guilt. The police arrested them immediately. The recordings of Gianni and Lara's conversations revealed the macabre details of their plan, including attempts to cover their tracks and fool anyone who suspected anything. Now we come to a question for you. What would you do if you were in Julia's shoes? Write it in the comments below. We are curious to know your opinions. On the day of the trial, Julia was nervous but determined. Gianni and Lara were present, with expressions of pure surprise and terror at seeing her alive. The judge examined all the evidence and found Gianni and Lara guilty of attempted murder and conspiracy. They were sentenced to 10 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Julia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Finally, she could start a new life. She looked at Filippo, who had been by her side every step of the way, and smiled. "I don't know how to thank you," she said gratefully. "You don't have to thank me," Filippo replied. "I only did what was right. Now it's time to move on and rebuild your life." Julia and Filippo decided to move together to a new city, far away from their painful memories. They began working with organizations that help victims of abuse, turning their painful experience into a positive force for others. Julia worked hard at this work, finding a new life mission that brought her much satisfaction. She found comfort in seeing how her experience could help others through difficult times, and this gave her a new perspective on life. Time passed and Julia began to build a new life for herself. Every day was a challenge, but also an opportunity to rebuild her lost trust. She met people who had lived similar experiences and found in them a support and understanding that she would never have imagined. Filippo was always by her side, supporting her and encouraging her not to give up. Together, they faced the fears and uncertainties of the future. If you have come this far, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Legal Light. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss the next stories. Your support is essential to continue telling extraordinary stories like this one. Julia was deeply affected by that event of pure terror and struggled to trust people. Every shadow, every unsaid word, reminded her of the betrayal she had suffered from the one she loved most. But then, with time and Filippo's help, she managed to find some serenity. She began to work with organizations that help victims of abuse and betrayal, transforming her painful experience into a positive force for others. This journey led her to rediscover trust in people and, above all, in herself. We thank you for following her story and invite you to stay with us for new incredible stories. Until next time.